The mountain province had not seen the sun in 7 days. Clouds the color of dried blood rolled across the sky, swallowing the peaks in a restless storm. Villagers sealed their doors with trembling hands, whispering prayers to gods who had long stopped answering. The air itself felt heavy, charged, as if the heavens were holding their breath. Then it came. A roar split the night apart. From the highest ridge, a colossal dragon uncoiled, scales black as wet obsidian, veins glowing faintly beneath its armored hide. Lightning crawled across its body like living chains. Each beat of its wings sent shockwaves through the valley, shattering trees and hurling rocks down the mountainside. Fire rained from the sky, homes burned, the river boiled, and in the chaos, a single figure walked forward. A lone warrior. No banner, no army, no witness brave enough to follow. Rain poured over his battered armor as he drew his blade. The dragon's golden eyes locked onto him, ancient and furious, as if it recognized something in his defiance. The first strike came like thunder. Claw met steel. Sparks exploded into the storm. The ground fractured. Beneath them as man and monster clashed in a dance of fire and lightning. The dragon's tail carved trenches through the earth. The warrior was thrown, rose again, and charged once more again and again, until, in a single desperate moment, as lightning struck the peak behind them, the warrior drove his blade deep into the dragon's throat. The world went silent. The dragon's roar turned into a strangled rumble, then into embers drifting into the rain. Its massive body collapsed, shaking the mountains one final time. The storm stopped instantly. Steam rose from its corpse. Scales dimmed. Fire faded. But not everything died. From the dragon's shattered jaw, one enormous fang remained, gleaming, untouched by flame or ash. It pulsed faintly, warm with a life that refused to fade. As the warrior reached toward it, the fang throbbed, as if something inside was still awake. By dawn, the mountains were silent. The dragon's corpse had begun to decay into ash, its colossal bones sinking into the earth. Only one thing remained untouched, the fang. It was carried down the mountain wrapped in cloth soaked in river water. The warrior who had slain the beast spoke little. His armor was scorched. His eyes were hollow. When asked what he intended to do with the relic, he gave only one answer: forge it. At the edge of the province stood a forge older than the warlords who ruled the land. Its chimney had never gone cold. Inside worked a man whose name had faded into legend. A blacksmith who had crafted blades for generals, rebels, and kings. It was said he feared no metal and no curse. The warrior placed the fang on the anvil. The moment it touched iron, the forge fire surged violently, flaring blue for a heartbeat before settling into an unnatural crimson glow. The blacksmith circled the fang slowly, studying its ridges, its density, the strange pulse running through its core. It was not bone, not entirely. The surface shimmered like polished steel, yet felt warm, almost breathing. He struck it once with a testing hammer blow. The sound that followed was not metal on bone. It was a low, resonating hum that vibrated through the walls of the forge, through the tools, through the blacksmith's chest. The water in the quenching basin began to tremble. Sparks erupted, spiraling upward in the shape of twisting coils, like miniature serpents made of fire. He did not step back. He struck again, harder this time. The fang did not chip. It did not crack. Instead, it glowed brighter. That night, after the warrior departed, the blacksmith remained alone with the fang on his anvil. The forge fire had died down, yet the relic emitted a faint heat. When he closed his eyes, he dreamed of skies burning and mountains collapsing beneath colossal wings. In the darkness of his dream, a golden eye opened, staring directly at him. He awoke before dawn. The fang was still on the anvil. The forge was already lit. The forging began before sunrise. The blacksmith sealed the doors and fed the furnace until the flames roared. Like a living beast, coal cracked, bellows groaned, heat shimmered against stone walls. The dragon's fang rested at the center of the forge. At first, nothing happened. Then the air thickened. The fire shifted from red to a blinding white, as though the fang itself was devouring the heat rather than melting beneath it. The blacksmith narrowed his eyes and struck the metal with full force. The anvil split. A fracture ran through the iron block like lightning across a night sky. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, rattling every tool from its hook. The fang remained unmarked. He struck again and again. Each blow sent sparks twisting upward in spirals, forming fleeting shapes of wings and claws before vanishing into smoke. The sound deepened, no longer a hum, but closer to a growl. The fang began to change, not by force, but by will. Its edges softened, curving naturally, as if guided by an unseen hand. The blacksmith realized he was no longer shaping the blade was shaping itself. Sweat poured from his brow as he hammered, in rhythm with the strange pulse. Within the fang, blood dripped onto the glowing surface. The furnace erupted, flames burst upward, licking the ceiling beams. He raised his hammer one final time and brought it down with a cry that drowned out the roaring flames. The blade took form, long, curved, perfectly balanced. It radiated a heat that did not burn the skin, but burned the air around it. The blacksmith plunged it into the quenching basin. The water did not hiss. It screamed. Steam exploded upward in a violent cloud, and within that cloud, for a single breathless moment, the silhouette of a dragon's head formed, jaws open, roaring, without sound. When the steam cleared, the sword rested in his hands, dark along its spine, silver along its edge, veins of faint crimson pulsing beneath the steel like a heartbeat. He stared at his reflection, and for an instant, the reflection blinked when he did not. The sword was delivered at dusk, wrapped in black cloth, bound with rope that had once tethered war horses. It felt heavier than any blade the warrior had carried before, not in weight, but in presence. When he first gripped the hilt, a pulse traveled through his arm, subtle, deliberate, like a second heartbeat syncing with his own. He ignored it. War had already reached the province's borders. Raiders swept through villages like a tide of iron and fire. The warrior rode to meet them beneath the sky still scarred from the dragon's storm. The first clash came fast. Steel met steel and ended instantly. The dragon-forged blade moved with unnatural precision. Armor parted like cloth. Shields split down the center. Each strike felt guided, corrected mid-swing by something unseen. The warrior did not miss. He cut through ranks as if walking through tall grass. Men fell before they understood what had touched them. Even the air seemed to recoil from the blade's edge, leaving faint streaks of heat in its wake. And with every life taken, the sword grew warmer. Not enough to burn, but enough to notice. By the end of the battle, the raiders had fled. The warrior stood alone, chest heaving, the blade humming faintly. Then he heard it a whisper, soft, almost curious. He turned sharply. No one stood behind him, only drifting smoke and the distant caw of crows. That night, sleep did not come easily. The sword rested beside him, yet he felt watched, not from outside, but from within. Shadows stretched longer than the candlelight allowed. The faint crimson veins beneath the steel pulsed steadily in the darkness. When he closed his eyes, he saw fire. He saw wings spreading across the sky. He heard a low, rumbling voice that did not speak words but carried hunger. The next morning, he woke with his hand already gripping the hilt. Reflexes sharpened. Movements became faster to fast. Sparring partners stumbled, unable to keep pace. Some claimed they saw something behind him when he struck. And in battle, as blood met blade, the whispers grew louder. The sword's glow no longer faded. A faint heat lingered along its edge. He stared at his reflection. For a moment, the eyes staring back were not entirely his own. Word of the blade spread faster than fire. They called him unstoppable, cursed blessed, a one-man army. And when the warlords of the eastern provinces united, they sent an army. Black River became the chosen ground, a wide stretch of water cutting through the valley like a scar. Mist clung to its surface at dawn, swallowing banners and armor alike. Thousands stood on one side, one stood on the other. The warrior stepped into the shallow edge of the river, boots sinking into mud stained by old battles. The dragon-forged sword rested at his side, humming faintly eager. Drums thundered, arrows darkened the sky. He moved before they landed. The blade flashed once, and the air itself seemed to split. Arrows shattered mid-flight, falling uselessly into the water. Soldiers charged with shields raised high. The first line never reached him. Each swing carved arcs of heat through the mist. Armor glowed before splitting apart. Steel weapons snapped upon contact. The river began to steam where blood met its surface. Then the whispers changed. They rose. A low vibration rolled across the battlefield, deeper than drumbeats. The mist thickened unnaturally, coiling and twisting around the warrior's movements. With every enemy that fell, the crimson veins along the blade brightened. And then something moved within the fog. At first, only a distortion, a ripple in the mist. But as the slaughter continued, The shape grew clearer, vast wings stretching from one riverbank to the other, a horned head lowering toward fleeing soldiers. The phantom dragon had begun to form. Panic spread. Men dropped weapons and fled. Horses bucked violently, refusing to advance. The ground trembled as though remembering the storm from nights past. The warrior felt it too. The sword no longer followed his command, it pulled. His arm jerked forward, striking faster than thought. His feet moved without decision. Each cut felt less like an act of will and more like obedience. The dragon's outline sharpened in the sky above the river, translucent, immense, born from mist and blood. The warrior tried to stop. The blade burned in his hand. For the first time since claiming it, fear gripped his chest. The river turned red beneath him. Steam rose thick and suffocating, towering above the chaos. The spectral dragon opened its jaws in a silent roar that shook the courage from every living soul. By the time the sun pierced the fog, the army was gone. Some lay fallen, most had fled. The warrior stood alone, chest heaving, surrounded by silence and drifting mist. Behind him, fading slowly into morning light, the phantom dragon dissolved, but the sword in his hand still pulsed, stronger than ever. By the time news reached the forge, the blacksmith already knew. Each night since the blade was completed, the forge fire flared without reason. Tools trembled. A low vibration pulsed beneath the floor like a distant heartbeat. Survivors whispered of a phantom dragon rising from mist and blood. The blacksmith did not look surprised. He looked afraid. He unrolled scrolls older than the province itself, brittle, parchment inked with warnings long ignored, drawings of celestial beasts, ritual circles, weapons forged not to kill, but to bind. There it was, written in fading script: a dragon's body may fall, but its spirit anchors to what endures. Bone remembers, Fang contains, blood awakens. The blacksmith's hands trembled. The Fang had never been lifeless. It had been a vessel. Every strike of the hammer had not shaped a weapon. It had given the dragon a new spine. Every drop of blood spilled by the blade had not fed the earth. It had fed the spirit trapped within. Far from the forge, the warrior began to change. Heat radiated from his skin even in winter air. His reflection lingered a fraction too long in still water. Faint patterns glowed beneath his veins, thin lines of crimson, branching like cracks in glass. The whispers were no longer distant. They spoke in rhythm with his breath. He saw flashes of memory that were not his own, soaring above mountains, diving through thunder clouds, watching civilizations rise and crumble beneath burning skies. Rage older than kingdoms flooded his thoughts, and hunger. The sword vibrated constantly, impossible to ignore. Its crimson veins pulsed in time with the warrior's heartbeat, faster and faster, as if sensing completely. In moments of stillness, a golden slit appeared within the steel, an eye opening along the blade's surface. Watching the world once more, the blacksmith gathered his tools, not to forge, but to undo. There was only one way to stop what had begun. Steel had given the dragon form. Steel would have to take it away. But the vessel was no longer just the sword. It was the man who wielded it. Dawn broke over a field that had known too much blood. The warrior stood at its center, unmoving, as though rooted to the earth. Smoke drifted in thin ribbons around him. The sword in his hand no longer hummed softly, it roared. Crimson light pulsed along the blade in violent surges, spreading up his arm like living fire. The air around him shimmered with heat, bending the horizon. Behind his shadow, something vast shifted, a shape too large to belong to a man. The blacksmith approached alone. No armor, no escort. Only the hammer that had shaped the Fang into steel. Each step felt heavier than the last. Put it down, he called, voice steady despite the tremor in the wind. The warrior turned slowly. His eyes flickered, brown one moment, molten gold the next. His breath came in short bursts, as though two beings struggled for control of the same lungs. I can hear it, he said quietly. It remembers the sky. The ground trembled. Mist thickened, swirling upward into a towering outline behind him. Wings unfolded, stretching across the ruined field. Horns curved toward the heavens. The phantom dragon stood fully formed now, translucent yet immense, its presence crushing the air itself. It had grown stronger, and it wore the warrior like armor. The blacksmith felt the weight of his mistake press into his chest. He had not forged a sword. He had forged a resurrection. The dragon's head lowered behind the warrior, jaws parting in a silent snarl. The blade lifted on its own, dragging the warrior's arm upward as if guided by invisible chains. The blacksmith did not retreat. He raised the hammer. "You asked for power," he said, "but power always asks for more." The warrior's voice broke through the roar for one fragile moment. "End it." The dragon lunged. In that heartbeat between life and oblivion, the blacksmith stepped forward and brought the hammer down upon the flat of the blade with every ounce of strength left in his aging body. The impact split the air like thunder. Cracks exploded along the steel, racing from hill to tip in glowing fractures. The dragon shrieked, not in sound, but in vibration that shook the bones of the earth. The warrior fell to his knees as the phantom writhed behind him. The blacksmith struck again. The blade shattered. A blinding eruption of light tore through the field, scattering mist and shadow alike. The dragon's form fractured into shards of burning gold, dissolving into ash carried by the wind. The roar faded. The tremors ceased. Where man and monster once stood, only silence remained. The warrior lay motionless. The broken pieces of the sword smoldered faintly around him. The dragon was gone, truly gone, but the cost had been paid. When the light faded, the field was still. Ash drifted gently through the morning air, settling over broken armor and scorched earth. The mist that had once carried the dragon's shadow was gone. The sky above was clear for the first time in weeks. The warrior lay upon the ground, his breathing shallow but peaceful. The crimson glow beneath his skin had vanished. His face, once twisted between man and monster, was calm. The blacksmith knelt beside him. There were no words left to say, only silence and understanding. Around them, the shattered remains of the sword lay scattered across the soil, dark fragments of steel, their crimson veins now dull and lifeless. The blacksmith gathered each piece carefully, wrapping them in cloth. He buried the fragments at the base of a lone sokolot tree overlooking the valley. No monument marked the spot. No tale would speak of what truly happened there. The forge was closed soon after, its fire extinguished for the first time in decades. The hammer that had shaped legends was hung upon the wall, never to be lifted again. Seasons passed. Grass reclaimed the battlefield. The river cleared. Children played along its banks, unaware of the terror that had once risen from its mist. And beneath the roots of the sokolot tree, something pulsed, faint, slow, among the shattered steel. One shard remained different, not dulled, not cold. A sliver carved from the very tip of the fang glowed softly in the darkness, not with rage, not with hunger, but with memory. The wind stirred the tree's blossoms, scattering petals across the earth above the buried shard. For a fleeting moment, the air carried a sound almost like distant wings. Then silence returned once more, but deep below, the ember endured. Legends fade, names are forgotten, battlefields turn into fields of grain, and the screams of war dissolve into lullabies carried by the wind. But power does not disappear, it changes form. The dragon that once darkened the skies was not defeated by steel alone. It was undone by the hunger that summoned it back. A fang became a blade became a vessel, and a vessel became a doorway. The warrior sought strength to protect his land. The blacksmith sought mastery over the impossible. Neither understood the truth carved into the bones of the world. When you bind a storm, you do not silence it, you give it shape. Beneath the sokolot tree, seasons continued their quiet dance. Roots tightened around buried steel. Petals fell like soft snow each spring. The shard slept, but sleep is not death. Somewhere in another age, another war would rise. Another hand would dig too deep into forgotten soil. Another heart would beat with the desire for power greater than flesh can bear. And when that day comes, the ember will answer. Some weapons are forged to defend. Some are forged to conquer. But the most dangerous blades are forged from something that once ruled the sky and still remembers how. The question was never whether the dragon could be killed. The question was whether humanity could resist becoming its new wings.